everyone and welcome. So today I'm going to explain to you why I DNF'd Wheel of Time, why it wasn't the series for me. So I DNF'd the Wheel of Time after 4 books in a 15 book long series, so I cannot say how the series would evolve after that. I'm just going to give my thoughts about the first 4 books. Now before we go in, I do want to mention that this is going to be non-spoiler, so if you haven't read the books and you're afraid, don't be, you can definitely watch this without being spoiled. However, do keep in mind that I will give away general knowledge about world building, character growth and stuff like that, because otherwise I cannot make this video. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't read the back of the book because you consider just the premise of a story to be spoilers, then yes, you will have some spoilers here, but I do think that most people would be okay with this. Another thing that I want to mention is that this is not a review. So in a review, I could definitely see that a book is not for everyone, so even though I dislike a certain book, I can see its redeeming qualities and I can recommend it to certain people. Other way around, even though I love a book, I can see that I wouldn't recommend it to just everyone because you might not like the premise, you might not like the setting. So there I would give a more balanced overview of the series. However, this really is why didn't I like Wheel of Time. So it is going to be pretty negative. I didn't take any notes, so I don't know if it's going to be ranty or if I can remain quite calm. So do keep that in mind. If you are a person who absolutely loves Wheel of Time and you can't handle it, if somebody is quite negative, bashing your series maybe, then this might not be the video for you. So now that everything of that is out of the way, I will start with the first negative that I have. And for that, I need to go a little bit into the plot. So most people might know this, but this is a story about a chosen one. And that's definitely very traditional fantasy. Most people think that it's overdone. I quite enjoyed it actually, and I also enjoyed the twist that was being given already in the premise. And for that we need to go and look at the magic system. So the magic is pretty soft, I don't mind soft magic, and you have a male and a female side. So you can almost see that as a pool of magic that people who have the ability can draw their powers from. However, in an age in the past, the male side had become tainted, so that means that when a male is being born and he has the ability to use magic, he will draw from that pool and become tainted himself, so over time he will become mad and very dangerous for his environment. This while the female side is absolutely fine, so nothing is wrong there. We then also need to know that the prophecy says that the chosen one will be a man. So that of course has some very interesting complications that I was very interested in as well, and that's why I picked up the series. So first of all, of course, if women can use magic and men actually can't, that's very interesting in terms of general world building and how these two sexes actually interact with each other. And I really liked that, or that idea, where you have women who are in power. So you have queens, for example. Queens are being helped and are being given information by Aes Sedai, and Aes Sedai are the women wizards. So the Aes Sedai is also a complete institution, and it's basically the most important powerhouse at that side of the world. So in this world, in terms of politics, women are very important. But also at a smaller scale, so just in a village, in a marriage, you see that there is a shift in power where it's more towards women. So I actually like that, and I wanted to see how that was developed. Another interesting complication is that when your chosen one is going to be a man, but you know that the pool of which he will take his power is tainted, that of course very strongly implicates that he will become mad himself. Another thing that you need to know is that you have this very specific part of the Aes Sedai whose sole mission it is to hunt down men who have power and to basically steal them, so take away their power before they become dangerous and insane. So you have that interaction or that balance that they need to maintain of, this is a man, he can wield power, do we steal him? But maybe he's the chosen one, and if we steal him, the dark one will win. So I really liked that and how that would be used by the author. However, I think that how he used it and how he decided to work with it is just done very poorly. First of all, the whole power balance between men and women is just, it's cringy. And I see a lot of people say that this is almost a work of feminism because of that, but I would say that it's the exact opposite. Because in the first 4 books, I couldn't find any of the women who I found enjoyable. All of them were ignorant, all of them were very arrogant, all of them looked down and belittled men. They wouldn't take advice from men because men are stupid. They would if a man would help them, they wouldn't even say thank you. They wouldn't even acknowledge that help. And that was true for all of them. They basically treated men like they were children. And that was very iffy for me. I didn't like that at all. Very cringy. Also, in terms of relationships, yeah, it just didn't work. It felt very unnatural and just robotic. Like it wasn't something that would just happen and you could read it from the page and like, oh yeah, I can see that this romance has been building up for a while now. All of a sudden, one of them would say, I'm in love with blah, and you just had to believe it, even though there was zero chemistry on the pages. So I didn't like the execution of that factor at all, but that doesn't mean that the men were enjoyable to read about. Most people know that I'm a very character-driven person, and that doesn't mean that I need to like the main character, but something interesting needs to happen there. And for me, the Dragon Reborn and all of his friends, no, they were not enjoyable. Nothing was happening there. They were very bland and they didn't have any character growth. If there was some growth towards the end of the book, then when a new book started, that growth was gone and everybody started from the beginning again. We had one of the main characters that I quite enjoyed a little bit, and that was Perrin, based on who he met in his arc and some of the magic systems that he became involved with. But then towards, well, basically in the fourth book, that already was tainted a little bit because of his romance and what happened there. There's also one romance where all of everything that's a little bit romantic is just iffy here, where you have a man who says that he's going to put his lover over his lap and then spank her if she does something that he doesn't like, which is just, after I read that, I had to close the book because who enjoys reading that? Who thinks that that's a natural relationship and that that's not cringy to read about? So yeah, in general, character arcs, all of that, it just wasn't done well. And I think that that's definitely an issue of Robert Jordan. Another thing when we talk about characters is that there's just too many. I don't know how many there are, but I think that somebody counted all of the named characters and it was over 1,000. It might be even worse. I might put the number here somewhere. But it was just ridiculous. And if you need that, I don't mind. Because often when I talk about this and that I have an issue about this, people almost belittle me and act as if I don't like it because it's too complicated. That's not it. But if you're going to complicate something, it needs to have a reason. It's, less is more unless more is necessary. And here I felt that, for example, you meet probably 200 Aes Sedai. There don't need to be 200. You can definitely boil it down to 50 or less than 50 because a lot of them have the same part to play in the book and it's just unnecessary to have all of them. It makes it very tedious to read about them because there are so many characters that you can't really feel invested in any of them. While if you would narrow it down, I would be more invested in knowing more about those Aes Sedai. You also have some characters that you meet in the first book, for example. They have a very small side quest, or they are just basically secondary characters that's there. And then in the later books, all of a sudden, there they are again. I didn't really like that. It just didn't feel like something that would happen, and that wouldn't be just a coincidence. So in terms of characters, I think that was basically the biggest problem that I had with the entire series, but there are more. Now, another thing that I didn't like, for example, that didn't work for me is Robert Jordan's writing style, and then especially his need to over-explain and over-describe a lot of things. Now, when we go to the descriptions, then they definitely felt a little bit tedious for me, especially when he goes and describes something that nobody is really interested in. For example, he would go and begin describing somebody's dress. That's fine. Describe the color, describe the general fit or the general cut. But when you go down to the level of the buttons and the small things that you can see there, you're just losing me. Because I think that everybody can agree that we don't have that many details when we're reading a book. We have a general setting in our head, that's it. Nobody is picturing the buttons. So if that happens once or twice, that's fine. But if he's explaining that about a side character that we're going to meet once, you've lost me. And if you do that over and over and over again, you've definitely lost me. If you then start explaining stuff and explaining them multiple times or using the same expression multiple times in a book, that's definitely unnerving as well. For example, this is something that even fans talk about and laugh about. We have a character, Nynaeve, who would constantly tug her braid. When she's angry, that's something that she does. People who are putting their dresses right, or basically nicking at their skirts, stuff like that. Always the same sentence, and it's used over and over and over again. And in this part, I would say that Jordan would have benefited from a good editor who would be a little bit strict with him and say, you know, cut this out. Same with the characters, cut those out because they don't work. It's not because you have an idea that you have to put it in your book. Another thing, but this goes again to the characters, how he writes, how people talk to each other, it just doesn't fit. One of the things that's a gimmick throughout the books is that the three main characters apparently can't talk to women. So when one of them is talking to a woman, he would think, oh, I wish that the other one was here because he knows how to talk to women. And then you switch to somebody else of the three people, and they would say the same but about another one. And it goes on and on and on again, and it's so tedious. Like, these are not 12-year-olds. These are, I think, between 16 and 20, and apparently they cannot talk to another person because they have breasts. It's a completely different species, and it just doesn't work. So if that would happen once, I would be like, okay, yeah, funny, haha, all three of them think that, fine. If you do it in 4 books, and it's happening multiple times per book, the joke is getting a little bit old. And that's one of the things that, yeah, his writing style, it just really hits me a little bit wrong. And I think if you had a strong editor, the series would be a lot shorter, because you would cut characters and you would cut unnecessary descriptions, and you would go from probably a 15-book series to just a 10-book series just doing that. But wait, because you could cut more. And with that, I mean part of the world building. Now, full disclosure, it's been a while since I've read the first 4 books, and to be honest, I haven't retained a lot about world building because I thought that probably 50% of it wasn't important. And that's why I actually liked the first book most of all, because it kept closest to the original plot, the original premise, where you have the chosen one. Yes, it's traditional fantasy, but you have some interesting twists there, but it keeps very close to that chosen one and his party. In the other books, it definitely dilutes further from that, and that's what I didn't like, because again, Robert Jordan had a lot of ideas, a lot of cool ideas, and he just threw them into one big series, while it's very important that you just make certain decisions and choose some things and then let other things maybe wait for a different series. For example, one of the things that Feist has done, and I haven't read his series yet, but he has 2 trilogies and they take place at the same point in time. But one takes place in one part of the world, and then the other trilogy takes place in a different part of the world. So you see the same thing, but he focused each trilogy on a part of the world. I would have liked that more. Robert Jordan, he stays with one character, your chosen one, his part of the world. He explains all of that, all of the political intrigue there. That's interesting. And then all of a sudden there is another party coming along. You don't really know any of the people who are part of that part of the world. You don't feel invested in that, but still you will get all of the information, that they have a different view on the prophecy, that they have a completely different political system, that they view Aes Sedai completely different, and all of that and what happens there, and the complete world building of that part of the world you will get, even though you're not invested because none of the characters are from there. And again, maybe that would change after book 4, but if I need to get all of that information in the first 4 books, who are 750 pages each, you're going to lose me if you then don't show me why it's important that I know that. And it's not only true for that part of the world, you get a lot of world building of other things as well that just don't matter at that time in the books. And that's why, again, it felt very long-winded and unnecessary. The same for the Aes Sedai. So like I said, it's one of the most important powerhouses, but you get so much information about what happens there and the trials that people need to go through, and also a little bit of the political intrigue, and you have this side of the Aes Sedai who think this, and then this who think that, and all of the intrigue, and it's just too much. You need to bottle it down to what's actually important and then keep that, and not dilute everything and talk about everything that you want to cramp into it. It feels almost like he was a first-time author, and I guess that that's the case for Wheel of Time or for The Eye of the World. And then he had so many ideas and he was so proud of all of them that he wanted to put all of them in, and that this editor didn't have the heart to say, you shouldn't. You should really pick what you choose. And that's true in all of the facets that I've talked about up until this point. So yes, the world building, if it kept to the core, I would have liked it. If he would have gone to different places, I would have liked it as well. If he would then show me main characters who lived there and show me a reason why I needed to know that. So world building, again, was a little bit of a no for me just because it was too much. Now, you might think, why have you read 4 books in this series if you have so many negative thoughts about it? Now, first of all, I must say that, like I said before, this is why I DNF'd it. I'm not talking about some of the things that I did enjoy, because of course there were things that I did enjoy. But the reason why after each book I kept wanting to read the next one was basically because of the endings. And I do think that that's something that Robert Jordan did very well, because as I said, he often goes to other places and he makes it way too big for you to be invested in any of this. But towards the end of each book, he zooms in again and he goes to the Chosen One and his battle and basically the thing why you picked up the book. And then those end scenes are always very impactful. And that's why at those endings, I think that that's were one of the best things that I've read at this point, especially the ending of the second book. Really enjoyed that one. And I immediately wanted to read the next book because wow, that's amazing. But then the next book always started without any of the development that you saw in the previous one. And it was still, again, everything, all of my complaints that I had, all over again until the very last part. And that kept going on until the 5th book, because I actually liked the ending of the 4th one, picked up the 5th one, and it immediately started about Aes Sedai and their politics and what happened there. And I didn't remember any of the names of these characters. I don't know if I've seen them before in the first 4 books or not, because I literally couldn't care. And I don't think that that has something to do with me, because normally I don't have a problem with remembering names. You know, I've read A Song of Ice and Fire, love that, don't mind that there are a lot of characters, same for a different series, but here Robert Jordan just didn't make me care about any of them, so I forgot their names almost instantly. So if you then bring them back after a couple of books, I'm not going to know, I'm not going to care. And that's why I started thinking, after that first page, I just couldn't continue because I couldn't make myself care about the Aes Sedai. That's when I started thinking, why am I actually reading this series? Now, another thing that of course is very important here is that it is a 15-book long series, and that if it was 5 books, for instance, and I just needed to read the last one, I would have read it. And I wouldn't have been as harsh as what I have been saying up until this point, because 5 books, it's not the best, but I'm not wasting a year of my life reading this. With a 15-book series, first of all, that's very unusual. I can maybe mention 5 series in total that have 15 or more books, so it's very unusual. If you want to use that, if you want to do that, something extraordinary, then there needs to be a reason. I think that this could have been cut down to maybe 10 books, 7 to 10, and I think that that would have made it a lot better. So he kept a lot of that in, where at this point, it's a 15-book series, it's too long. And if you want me to read something that long, it needs to be amazing and not just, it's fine. And that's the feeling that I had with this series. Now, I must say that I am quite excited for the TV show, because I think that a lot of the unnecessary stuff, a lot of the cringy stuff is going to be removed, and that we have the original premise, which does sound very cool in my opinion. So, I'm sorry if this was a little bit rambly. As I said, I didn't really take any notes, but I do hope that this explains a little bit why Wheel of Time just didn't work for me. And a question that I now have for people who have read this one and maybe also read Malazan is, would Malazan work for me? Because I am quite interested to give that a try, even though before I just really didn't want to because it felt very convoluted. But then a couple of people have told me that they think that I would like it. So if you've read both and you know why I disliked Wheel of Time, please let me know if I would like Malazan. So, as always, I hope that you enjoyed the video. Please let me know if you liked Wheel of Time or not, if you want to pick it up or not, and see you next time. Bye!